right, let's see what one of these factoring by grouping problems looks like from the beginning. So what it's going to look like is that there are 4 terms, 4 pieces added together, and we're going to split them up 2 by 2. Now the first step was look to see if there's anything in common between all of them. 3 of them have an X, but that one doesn't have an X. That one doesn't have a number in front, so there's nothing we can divide them all by. So instead we're going to just split them up 2 by 2 and look for a greatest common factor in each pair. So in the first pair, they both have 2 X's. So we can factor out an X squared, and then what's left behind is X plus 6. Now remember, factoring just means dividing. So if it helps, when I'm factoring out X squared, that really means I'm dividing both by X squared, right? X cubed divided by X squared is how I got this X. 6X squared divided by X squared is how I got the 6. All right, let's look at the second pair. Well, what's in common here is a 4. And we do need to put a plus or minus sign here. So you need to decide, am I factoring out a positive 4 or a negative 4? These are both positive, so it's definitely a plus. And then 4 in parentheses. And again, factoring means dividing. So we can think of it as 4x divided by 4 and 24 divided by 4. Here the 4's cancel, so that's x. And 24 divided by 4 is 6. And there's definitely still a plus sign here. Well, just like the last page, now we're on this last step where we got to check, do the parentheses match? And they do, so we can take out x plus 6, and then what's left is x squared plus 4. And that's the other reason it was so important that we had that plus sign there, is so that we knew whether this should be plus or minus. So it's a little strange, it's definitely new. Let's try this next one. X cubed plus 4x squared minus 2x minus 8. So, quick check, there's nothing that they all have in common. So we're gonna go 2 by 2. In the first group, I can divide by x squared again, just sort of like the last one. So x squared, and what's left behind after I divide by x squared is x plus 4. Now this one is a little different because these are both negative. I'm gonna make it a negative 2 that we're factoring out. And really it's just when the leading coefficient, meaning the first number is negative, then we factor out a negative. So we're going to factor a negative GCF if the first number, in this case in just the pair, is negative. All right, so now I'm dividing by negative 2. And if it helps, put divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, because that's what we're doing. Negative 2x divided by negative 2 makes a positive x. Negative 8 divided by negative 2 makes a positive 4. Well, good thing the parentheses match. I should also mention that if you ever want to check that you did it right, you can always multiply it out, right? That's the great thing about factoring, is that it's easy to check. You just multiply, and you get negative 2x minus 8 again. But of course, the other check is that parentheses match, so that gives us some confidence as well. X plus 4 is what matches, and then what's left is x squared minus 2. Nice. At this point, you could also check by doing a full FOIL and making sure you get back to the original problem. That is a good way to check as well. All right, next problem. 4 terms, we're gonna go 2 by 2. We could do a check to see if there's anything they all have in common, but there's not. So let's just do the first 2. They both have t squared. So I'm dividing by t squared, and what's left is t plus 4. And you could, of course, check multiplying it out. All right, well, I sort of know I want t plus 4. There's no GCF here. If there's nothing in common, if there's nothing, no factors in common, then the GCF is 1. All right, well, let's see about that then. So we're gonna keep it plus, because the t is positive. And then I just put plus 1. And then what's left after I factor out a 1 is t plus 4. Normally we wouldn't factor out a 1 because it doesn't change it, but we need that placeholder there. Because now I'm going to factor out t plus 4, and what's left behind is t squared plus 1. Okay. Again, if you wanted to check, multiply it all out, you could FOIL this and get right back to the beginning. All right, last one of these factoring by groupings. First, there's some commonality, but 14 isn't divisible by 5, and some have x's, some have y's. There's no overall GCF. So we need to do just a 2 by 2 GCF. Well, 6xy and 15x, they both have x's, but 6 and 15 are both divisible by 3. So the GCF is 3 times x. And if it helps, you can write it out. Factoring out GCF just means dividing. So we're dividing both 6xy and 15x divided by 3x. So here, 16 divided by 3 is 2. The x's cancel, so it's going to be 2y. Here, the x's cancel again, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. So that'll be plus 5 because there's a plus sign in the middle. All right. These two, the leading coefficient is negative. So I know I'm going to be factoring out a negative. Now I just got to figure out, well, what divides 14 and 35? Hopefully we know our times tables well enough to know that 14 is 2 times 7, 35 is 5 times 7, so it's the 7 that's in common. So we're going to factor out a 7, and then there's no variable in common because one has a y, the other doesn't. So it's just negative 7 we need to divide by. So we have negative 14y divided by negative 7, and then negative 35 divided by negative 7. A negative divided by negative makes a positive. So this will be 2y. Negative divided by negative makes a plus 5. Oh, look, the parentheses match. That's the nice thing about this method, is that you know pretty much whether you've done it right. Because if the parentheses don't match, you know you've done it wrong. Or that, that something needs to be redone. But parentheses match, 2y plus 5 comes out, 3x minus 7 is what's left over.